How are you? It's a delight to see you. I'm glad we can be together on this incredibly rainy Sunday. What happened to the temperatures? It was like last Sunday it was 90 degrees, and it's like 60 degrees now. Weather's an amazing thing to talk about. Has anybody ever told you that time heals all wounds? Are there words that you find in your mouth that you sometimes offer, trying to give some comfort to someone to let them know that the pain they're suffering is not the end of all things? Somebody told me if time heals all wounds, why is it that time's never healed a flat tire? If time heals all wounds, why are there so many ticked off old people? Can you point to a scar? I mean, on a hand or an elbow, on your chest or your knees, scar in your body or your psyche. Most of us have experienced scarring of some kind. You can point to it. If you look really close on my temple, you can find a scar from being a 4-year-old. While my parents were downstairs entertaining friends, playing cards, and having dinner, I was upstairs exploring my father's shaving kit. Putting some foam on my face, I then got a straight edge razor, which I used to entertain the guest when I went running downstairs screaming and there was blood all over my head. If you were to point to my daughter's right knee, you'll discover a surgery from when she was 4. When she was 3, we discovered a nodule that was growing on her knee. We watched it for a year, and the doctors, concerned that it might be cancerous, suggested surgery. We said yes. No fun to take a 4-year-old into a hospital under anesthesia to receive surgery. She recovered great, discovered it was a fibrous growth that would have continued to grow and possibly caused problems. So we as parents said, yes, we did the right thing. But when she was 14 years old and a cheerleader and wanted to be attractive to everybody in the world, having a 6-inch scar on her knee was a sign that she had the worst parents in the history of the world. Do you have scars you can point to? There are some wounds that we self-inflict because we think it'll make our lives better. We go to college and put in a lot of hours. We work 70-hour, 80-hour weeks. We do what it takes to move ahead, to make things better. We're kind of like people who work their muscles by lifting weights, injuring their arms and so that the fibers will rebuild themselves stronger than they were before the weights were lifted. I sat down with Heather Shue, and she showed me a tattoo, a new one on her back that shows the development of a butterfly, a particular butterfly whose name and species I don't remember. And I asked, how did you get that? Like, I'm hoping that somebody just ironed it on. But it was 6 hours of needles being poked into her back. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So there's some self-inflicted wounds that we want, like it's worth paying the price. We are like Marines who are awakened at 4:30 in the morning, and somebody puts 35 pounds of weights in our backpack. We go out in the middle of rain and are told to take a hill that's covered in mud, and we say, we love this, bring it on, we're better than you. A painter from the 19th or 20th century, Renoir, made some great French Impressionist paintings. As he aged, he had arthritis all over his body, including down to the tips of his fingers, so that every stroke he made in a painting was painful. And a friend begged him to give up his passion for art and replace it with a passion for his own health. And Renoir said, the pain will pass, but the beauty will remain. There's some wounds we take on ourselves because we think it will make our lives beautiful. There are other self-inflicted wounds that we wish we hadn't done. I mean, do you have things that you said you wish you could take back, acts that you've done that you wish you hadn't done, consequences you created for somebody else, like my son-in-law wrecking my car last night? Everybody's fine until I see him. There are things we wish we hadn't done, and there are things I have done that haunt me 40, 50 years later, like ghosts that when they come, I just cringe at their presence. Oh, I wish I had done that. Why didn't I do that? Why did I do that? There are other injuries, other wounds that we suffer that are nobody's fault. They're an accident, like what's happening in North and South Carolina through Florence. Sharon and I had a house burned to the ground by an arsonist just as we were starting our marriage. I now try to imagine what it would be like, not just to lose your house and all of its contents, but to lose your neighborhood, your neighbors, to not be able to go back home, to not have a place where you can rest, where you can start your life over again, to lose it all. And there are the wounds, the losses that are because of an attack, like 9/11, like a bully in the playground, like a boss who loves humiliating employees to make themselves feel big, like Maggie. Maggie wrote a letter to Paul Young, the writer of The Shack. She described being 16 years old and a marathon runner, out early one morning to get herself in shape. She was abducted by a man who took her to a field and there assaulted her twice, strangled her and covered her body in brush. Later came back, removed the brush, and shot her 5 times with a .22 caliber pistol and left her for dead. Can you point to the scar in your body, your mind, or your psyche? A wound? Paul Young says, we are divided as a nation between the left and the right, religiously, ethnically, socially, financially. But we all have 2 things. All people have 2 things in common: what we love and that we lose. Love and loss. I would say for all conservatives and progressives, Democrats and Republicans, we have these 2 things in common: the experience of wonder and the experience of wounds. It's kind of a common humanity that we share. I want to talk about our wounds, both ours and the people who suffer wounds that we know. Because what we really want is our own wounds to heal, and we want to be an agent of healing to somebody else. As my template, I want to use Psalm 77. It's written by a fellow named Asaph, like St. Asaph, the street in Old Town. That was named after a bishop who helped in the Revolutionary War. This guy wasn't at the Revolutionary War. He was assigned by David to be the assistant to the choir master, kind of like our Carly to Ernest. Wrote about 12 of the Psalms, and this is one of lament. I want to pay attention because you're going to notice 3 movements, and I want to use it as the template, a blueprint of how God moves us through wounds to scars, from not being able to move because of the pain to being able to put our lives back together again. The first movement, you're going to hear someone with their hand stretched out in a fist saying to God, no! And so when I start that one, I'll ask you to do that with me. And then we'll explain a little bit of what the words say. And then it transitions to an opening of the hand and going, It's a memory. And then the third is the hand taking another hand and saying yes. One of the best theologians of the 20th century was a Jewish writer named Martin Buber, who wrote a famous classic called I and Thou. In it he says, some wounds are best healed by meetings and being met rather than explanations and analysis. I'll do it again. It's a complex kind of thing, but you got it, but I like the phrase, so I want to say it again. Some wounds are best healed by meetings and being met rather than explanations and analysis. He means it takes our presence. Okay, so I'm going to, if you want to go along, I'm going to be reading from Psalm 77. I'm going to read. Bill did a great job of reading. I'm going to read it again and listen to what I think is going on. Psalm 77, the beginning point is the clenched fist raised to the heavens and the scream of no. So I invite you in reading this psalm, when you think that people aren't doing what God wants, you know that this is what the psalmist did, that this is part of our Christian tradition, that we bring God into the story by the way we talk to God and about God. So I'm going to invite you to raise your hand in a fist and with me say no. Are you ready? No. I cry aloud to God. aloud to God that he may hear me. In the day of my trouble I seek the Lord. In the night my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. Is that like one of the best lines in literature? My soul refuses to be comforted. I mean, the problem with saying that time heals all wounds, it's as if you're talking to a child who has just fallen and skinned their knee, and all you have to do is put some dirt on it, kiss it, get it a Band-Aid, spray a little on it, and then you put your arms around them, and in 10 minutes they forget it ever happened, and they move on and play on the playground like nothing happened. When someone says to you, time heals all wounds, this too will pass, what it usually is experienced as is salt in the wound, a way of saying this pain doesn't really matter because one day it's all going to be better. The fact that I might recover does not change the fact that this hurts. This person has their hand raised to God in a fist and says, no, this isn't right. I shouldn't be going through this. I don't like this. This should not have happened. I think of God and what word would you expect? I think of God and I moan. I meditate and my spirit faints. You keep my eyelids from closing. I am so troubled I cannot speak. I consider the days of old and remember the years long ago. I commune with my heart at night. I meditate and search my spirit. And this is what he says when he's meditating and searching his spirit. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? I say it is my grief that the right hand of the Most High has changed. To be present with someone who's wounded means you might hear words just like that. This is a letter I read. It has been 4 months since I lost my best friend. 4 months since I was able to hear my dad's voice. 4 months ago, April 28th, was the worst day of my life. Time hasn't healed anything for me. I'm still confused. I'm still angry. I'm still left without a father, left without the man who was supposed to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. There are some pains in which our soul's best response is to refuse to be comforted. It's the only way to honor those that we love. The second movement is to go from the clenched fist, going through life thinking you're going to be hit and you're ready to hit back, or you're defending yourself so you don't get hurt, to go from that to this. Sometimes it's really slow. The opening of the hand and saying, The psalmist then begins to remember when life was good. So that the only story the psalmist knows is not the pain of the wound, but the present of what was loved, the wonder. I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the people. With your strong arm you redeem your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. That moment when you release. We have 4 members of our congregation who have died in this last week. And we did a service on Friday and do another one this afternoon. One of the great things you and I get to do is to go visit the people that have lost someone. Get to take food or flowers, drop off cards. I get to help them prepare the funeral. Emily and I had the great honor of sitting down with both Don's family and Ann's family. And there's this beginning where they tell us about how painful it is. Neither family had a clenched fist. I then, or Emily will say, what we're taught to say, tell us more about Anne, tell us more about Don. Because what we want to do is we want to recover this thing that's true. Their being gone is true. Anne's last 6 months was like a shut-in in her house after the diagnosis of cancer. But there's other things that are true. So when we were at Anne's house, they had put out on the dining room table 18 books that she had made for her granddaughter, Ellie. When Anne was in her 70s, she said, Ellie, you want to go to New York? And so the two of them make a trip to New York together. There are 18 books that they have out on the dining room table. They want us to touch them, to read them. They're filled with poems and pictures and descriptions of what that year was like for the child. It was, what they said to us was that Anne was her best self when she became a grandmother. What they wanted us to know was this recovery. When they talked to us about Don, it was this man who in New York had 50 real estate offices with 500 agents. He was a man who loved food. From the moment he was born until the moment he died, he watched in the hospital when he could not eat a bite but threw up every bit of food that was offered to him, the Food Channel 24/7. A foodie to die for. And he would make great food. And if you got to know him, you would discover that the way he understood God was that God is love. This passionate, wondrous God. And though he might not understand anything else about God, that part he believed was true. That's what Laura, the person responsible for all of our receptions and everything that happens in Wesley Hall, Laura Derby, that's what she wanted us to know about Don. That's what the psalmist is doing. Recovering the goodness, the richness, the part of life that you can just relax and go, like papaya made by Don. The third is this taking an open hand and taking the hand of someone else and saying yes. It sometimes takes a long time before you can do that again. Before you can say yes to life. Yes to somebody else. Yes to God. To get up and move because it hurts to move. The wound is sore. See if you hear it. What the psalmist is referring to is the slaves of Egypt finding their freedom by crossing through the Red Sea. And God churning up the water, the terrible, terrible drowning waters. And God walking across the water. But you can't see God. You don't know it's God. God doesn't even leave a footprint. So all you can do is trust. Listen. When the waters saw you, O God, the waters are dangerous, remember. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. It comes this moment when you want God to be your defender, the one who's on your side, the one who's fighting for you. You're not simply pleading with God, but you're asking God to come down and be beside you and fight for you. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep trembled. The clouds poured out water, the skies thundered, the arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind, your lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters. Yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Maggie wrote a letter to Paul Young. I know exactly what it feels like to have the peace of Christ in you when absolute hell is happening around you. Though I don't understand where it comes from, I've never forgotten the calm that overcame me that morning. It was absolutely terrifying when I didn't know what on earth was happening to me, not knowing if I would be alive at the end of the day. Even when I was shot, God still reached down and held his hand over my soul telling it to stay in my body, reassuring my soul that God had placed it in a body that would be able to withstand what was happening to it. She survived the attack and continued as a runner, an athlete in high school and college, though there were 3 bullets that remained permanently lodged in her body. There is this time, this courageous time, this tenacious resource that we have from God, so that the words of the psalmist are true. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I offer to you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.